G'day guys, welcome to this video series where we're going to break down everything that you need to know to master each and every detachment in the Chaos Space Marine Codex. We're going to break down the detachment rules in detail, go through what they do, and give each one a rating of 0 to 10. We're going to break down every enhancement available to each detachment. We're going to talk about which ones are worth the points, which ones you're going to want to leave behind, and we're going to give each of them a rating of 0 to 3. We're then going to break down all of the stratagems, some of the amazing power, which ones are worth the command points and which ones are not, and we're going to give each one of those stratagems a rating of 0 to 3 as well. We're then going to talk about which data sheets pair best with the stratagems, enhancements, and detachment abilities to create some truly brutal combos on the tabletop, and we're going to give them a further rating of 0 to 10. Once that's done, we're going to have an overall power rating for the detachment of 0 to 50 based on the above points. This is going to give you a real indication of how powerful this detachment is. Then we're going to include an example list that includes all of the powerful combos that we've talked about earlier. We're going to give some practical examples of how to deploy that list and how to engage with the terrain and your opponent in various mission formats. And finally, we're going to place that detachment on the detachment leaderboard. We're going to give it a tier rating and we're going to place it in contrast to the other detachments to help you decide which detachment you want to field when you're running your Chaos Space Marines. So with that being said, let's get stuck into the video.
Look for the Blood God.
Alrighty guys, today we're going to be talking about the Chaos Cult Detachment. This is the detachment that's fully focused on your damned models. It's going to let you bring lots of Accursed Cultists, regular Cultists, Traitor Guardsmen. This is your Horde-style Chaos Space Marine army. So let's get into the detachment rule first. The detachment rule for this is called Desperate Devotion, and basically each time a damned unit from your army with a Dark Pact ability is selected to make a normal move or advanced move, or declare a charge, excluding units that just arrived from reserves that turn, it can make a Desperate Pact. See below. If it does, until the end of the phase, add 2 to the move characteristic of models in that unit, and add 2 to the charge rolls for that unit. And each time a unit makes a Desperate Pact, it must first take a leadership test. If that test is failed, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds before any effects of the Desperate Pact are resolved. So basically, you're going to be able to use your Dark Pacts and your Desperate Pacts. The Dark Pact used in your shooting and fight phases, and the Desperate Pact used in the movement or charge phases. And you're going to potentially take a ton of mortal wounds in the process, but if you do take them, you're going to gain really cool abilities. You're going to gain, your sustained or lethal hits from your Dark Pacts, and additional movement or additional charges from your Desperate Devotion and your Desperate Text. So that's a really cool faction ability. However, it does only impact units like cultists or accursed cultists that, in my opinion, aren't necessarily the most points efficient or powerful units we have available to us at the moment. So it's a bit of a mixed bag of a detachment rule. So with all of that considered, I'm only going to give this one a 4 out of 10. It's not particularly powerful. If this was something that could affect units like Chosen or Legionaries or any of your hard-hitting combat threats, I would really, really like it. However, the fact that it's going to cause you to take even more mortal wounds because you're going to be Dark Pacting and Desperate Pacting is going to hurt a lot, and the fact that it's only affecting units like Cultists makes it somewhat less impressive. Alright, so let's have a look at the enhancements now and see what we can dig up for this faction. So we've got the first one is the Cultist's Brand. So it's 20 points, Dark Apostle or Damned model only. If every model in the Bearer's unit, excluding Dark Disciples, is damned, you can reroll advance and charge rolls made for the Bearer's unit. So that's pretty good. Being able to reroll those advance and charges is particularly interesting when paired with that detachment rule to get pluses to your advances and your move and your charge rolls. So it does mean that these units are going to be quite zippy. They're going to fly across the board pretty fast. So I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 3. Next, we've got the Amulet of Tainted Vigor. This is 20 points, Dark Apostle model only. In your command phase, you can return up to D3 damned models, excluding character models, to the Bearer's unit. So this is really good. The Accursed Cultists lost their ability to regenerate models in this new codex. However, this brings it back in a way, and it's going to allow you to bring back D3 destroyed damned models, which can be the big torments in your Accursed Cultist units. So you can tank wounds on those big guys, and then your opponent's going to really struggle to chew through them, and then even if they do chew through and kill 2 or 3 of them, you can just resurrect them straight away. So that's really effective, and it also is going to allow you to do interesting things because you do this in your command phase. You can do this to string out onto objectives that you weren't controlling previously, which is really interesting. there's a lot of tactical cards that revolve around killing opponent units that are on objectives. So what you can do is stage yourself near an objective, but not on it, and then your opponent can't get those secondaries for taking an objective off you or for killing you off of an objective. But then in your turn, you're going to be able to resurrect in the command phase onto those objectives and score the primary that you would have not been able to get if you didn't have this ability. So I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 3, simply because it's now limited to only a single unit, because you have to take it as an enhancement. Previously, this was something that they all had access to. And again, it's only going to be impacting realistically one unit. I think this is almost always going to be used in an accursed cultist unit, because resurrecting just general cultists is kind of irrelevant. But yeah, so 2 out of 3 for this one. Now let's talk about the Incendiary Goad. So it's 15 points, Dark Apostle or damned model only. While the bearer's unit is below its starting strength, add 1 to the strength characteristic of melee weapons equipped by damned models in that unit. And while this unit is below half strength, add 1 to the attacks characteristic of those weapons as well. So this is pretty cheap, and being able to get potentially +1 strength and +1 attack is pretty wild. As a World Eaters player primarily, I've known how often that can make such a significant difference in the damage output of the unit. And I think that the damage output is something that this army is going to sort of lack and sort of struggle with, given that it's going to be primarily focused around those damned units. So this one's really, really good in that regard. So I'm going to give this one also a 2 out of 3. And the last one is Warped Foresight. 10 points, Dark Apostle or damned model only. This bearer has the Scout's 6 inches ability. So this one for 10 points, absolute steal. Being able to scout is really good. Now, the Accursed Cultist units already have Scout built in, but if you attach a Dark Commune or a Dark Apostle to the unit, because that model doesn't have Scout, then this unit no longer will be able to make a Scout move. Because in order to make a Scout move, every model within the unit has to be able to Scout. So basically what this is going to allow you to do, and the reason that it's relatively cheap, is because all it's going to let you do is attach a character to one of those Accursed Cultist units and keep the Scout move that you already sort of had. So it allows you to sort of, take those units, make those attached units without suffering any penalties. So with that being said, being able to Scout move one of those big Accursed Cultists, Dark Commune combined attached units, scouting that whole thing forward, and then getting potentially pluses to your moves and charges. Very, very cool. So I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 3 as well. Alright, now let's have a look at the stratagems. Stratagems often make or break detachments, in my opinion, so let's have a look at what they've got here. So we've got Chosen for Glory. So this one's in your shooting phase or the fight phase, 1 damned unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot or fight yet this phase. Your unit can make a Desperate Pact. If it does, until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack, you can reroll the hit roll, and if your unit did not fail the resulting leadership check, then you can reroll the wound roll as well. Alright, I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 3. Anything that's going to get you to reroll hits and reroll wounds is absolutely wild. The downside to this, of course, is that you're probably going to be taking a Dark Pact in your shooting phase, a Dark Pact in your fight phase, a Desperate check in your movement phase, a Desperate check in your charge phase, and you're also going to be making this check as well. So there's a lot of checks that you're doing here. You're going to lose a lot of models along the way, so that's the downside to it. However, rerolling hits and wounds, particularly powerful on units like the Cultist, because they have a relatively bad weapon skill and ballistic skill, and they're not particularly strong, which means you're often going to be wounding on like 5s or 6s, so getting to reroll that means that 1, 2, 3, and 4, you get to roll again. So yeah, solid 3 out of 3 for this one. Very, very powerful stratagem. Next, we have Selfless Demise, 1 command point. In the fight phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, 1 damned unit from your army that was selected as a target as one or more of those attacks. But until the attacking unit has resolved all of its attacks, each time a model in that unit is destroyed, roll a d6. On a 6, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound after all of these attacks have been resolved. I'm going to give this a 1 out of 3 because you're only dealing those mortal wounds back on a 6. So even if you had a unit of 20 cultists and they came in and killed the entire unit of 20 cultists, you're going to roll 20 dice. And on average, you're going to roll like 3 to 4. So basically what this is saying is if your opponent just deletes your entire unit, you might do 3 mortal wounds back to them. That's pretty bad. That's not particularly impressive because you've just lost the unit. And you still, like, if you think about this compared to a grenade strat, The grenade strat on average does about 3 mortal wounds, but it's not contingent on you losing a unit. You know, you have to lose a unit to be able to do the same amount of damage back to them as throwing a grenade. It's not really that good. So this one's getting a 1 out of 3 from me. Alright, next we have Infernal Sacrifice. Fight phase. One damned unit from your army that has not been selected to fight this phase. Your unit can make a Desperate Pact. If it does, your unit suffers D3 mortal wounds in addition to any suffered for failing the result. And until the end of the phase, add 1 to the attack's characteristic of melee weapons equipped by models in that unit. And if your unit did not fail the resulting leadership test when making the Desperate Pact, until the end of the phase, improve the strength characteristic of those attacks by 1 as well. Alright, so this is similar to the Incendiary Goad, however it's a reactive stratagem that you're going to be able to use, and again, you are going to be losing a lot of models in the process. This army is definitely on suicide watch. It's heading out there and it's doing almost as much, if not more, damage to itself than it's going to do to your opponent. However, with a combination of these strats, you're going to be able to really pump that damage up. So I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 3 as well, just because it really does ramp that damage output up to the next level. And chances are, when you've thrown out one of these units into combat, it's probably going to die in the next turn anyway. So if you take a few additional casualties on the way down, it's not that big of a deal. So yeah, 2 out of 3 for the Infernal Sacrifice. Now let's talk about Crazed Focus. So this is done in your shooting phase. You can select one damned unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot yet this phase. Your unit can make a Desperate Pact. If it does, until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack, improve the armor penetration characteristic of that attack by 1. And if your unit did not fail the subsequent leadership test, improve the strength characteristic of that attack by 1 as well. Alright, so +1 AP and +1 strength is pretty good. It is only in the shooting phase, so we're talking about a big unit of 20 cultists, most likely utilizing this, or a unit of Trader Guardsmen. And being able to put those weapons up, +1 strength, +1 attack is pretty good. Combines with your Dark Pacts as well. And like I said, you're often going to be presenting one of these units and it's going to die next turn. So even though you're going to be taking some casualties when you do this, because you're potentially going to fail tests and etc., it's not that big of a deal, because as long as when you come out you do the damage to your target, you don't really care about what comes back your way. So I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 3 as well. I think this is pretty good. Alright, this one is used in your charge phase, and you get one damned unit from your army, and until the end of the turn, your unit is eligible to declare a charge in a turn in which advanced. So this is obviously very powerful. Advance and charge is fantastic. There is the worth noting that the Accursed Cultist Dark Commune combo, which is going to be very critical to the way that this army performs, has the capacity to get advance and charge already in its datasheet. However, this allows you to shore that up by getting it across multiple units, getting it multiple times, those sorts of things. And also, there may be situations where you want to advance and charge a unit of regular cultists onto an objective or something like that, because if your opponent has something relatively small on an objective, you might want to swamp it with 20 cultists to take that objective from them. So there is a little bit of utility there. I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 3. And then last but not least, we have MortalThres. This one's pretty wordy, so let's get stuck into it. It's 1 CP, it's a strategic ploy. In your opponent's shooting phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, one Heretic Astartes unit from your army that was selected as a target of one or more of the attacking unit's attacks, and one friendly damned unit within 3 inches of your unit and visible to both your unit and the attacking unit, until the end of the phase. While your damned unit is on the battlefield, each time your opponent would make a wound roll for an attack that targets your Heretic Astartes unit, if your damned unit is visible to the attacking model and an eligible target for the attack, no roll is made. Instead, your damned unit suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage characteristic of the attack. Alright, so that's a lot of words to basically say you can bodyguard your Heretic Astartes units with your damned units. I don't think this is super really exciting, because you're probably not taking many Heretic Astartes units in this army, because a lot of your damage is going to come from those bigger Cursed Cultist Dark Commune bricks. However, it is pretty nice to have, you know, a unit of Chosen or something like that running up behind a unit of regular cultists, and knowing that if your opponent tries to target your Chosen, you can just go, cool, 1 CP, any attacks that would have hit those Chosen are going to hit the cultists instead. There is a pretty easy workaround for this, though, in that your opponent is very likely to just turn their guns on the cultists first, kill all the cultists, and then all of a sudden you can't use this stratagem anymore because the cultists are all gone. So it has its pluses and its minuses. I think a lot of people are going to use this to protect high-value targets like a Vindicator, because it means that if they try to shoot high-damage weapons, you're going to be able to just translate that high-damage weapon into mortal wounds and take it all on the cultists. So I think that's probably where more of the utility is going to come into this. But given that your opponent has the ability to navigate around it by just targeting the cultists first, stops this from being the busted stratagem that it could otherwise be. So I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 3 as well. Alrighty guys, now let's talk about one of the combos that I think is kind of interesting for this detachment. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to take a big unit of a Cursed Cultist, you're going to add a Dark Commune to it, and you're going to give that Dark Commune the Incendiary Goad. You're then going to use the casualties from your Dark Pacts and your Desperate Pacts to remove all of the mutants and the regular guys, not the characters, from the Dark Commune unit, so that you can bring your unit below half strength without losing any of your Torments or your beatstick characters or the character that has the enhancement, right? And then basically when you do that, you're going to be able to go below half strength. You're going to use Infernal Sacrifice and Chosen for Glory. And now those 6 Torments are going to be able to do insane amounts of damage. I've got it written down here. It's basically going to be able to get up to 60 attacks that are going to be Strength 7, AP 1, and 2 damage, with either sustained hits or lethal hits, and with reroll hits, reroll wounds, +1 to hit, and +1 to wound. So this unit is going to put out an ungodly amount of damage, but it's worth noting, in order to pull this off, you have to go below half strength. So you're going to be sacrificing a massive chunk out of that unit. However, one of the plus sides is the mutants aren't there to do damage. They're there to essentially be these sacrificial ablative wounds for your torments. So you're going to be able to, you don't really care if you're losing them. And if you need to, you can spend stratagems to bring them back. So this is the main damage dealing brick that you're going to be throwing at your opponent. And that's really, really fantastic. However, I don't really think there's that many other tricks in this detachment. It's relatively, straightforward point and click. It's big bricks of combat horde, and you're just running at your opponent. There's no real, interesting combos outside of this. So for overall discretionary points for this detachment, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10, just because the only thing I could really find was that one interesting combo, which gives this detachment a total of 26 out of 50. Alrighty, let's have a look at the Chaos Cult list that I've written for you guys that combines all of that stuff that we've just discussed into a list. So we're going to start with a Dark Commune. This one has the Incendiary Goad, as we just discussed. Then we're going to have a second Dark Commune with Warped Foresight, and a third Dark Commune which has no enhancement on this one, and that's purely for points. Then we're going to go in with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 20-man cultist bricks. So these are your standard cultists. There's 120 of them. There's so many bodies on the board. And the idea here is that we're just going to overwhelm our opponent with horde. And basically, if they don't have enough bullets, if they don't have enough attacks in their army to deal with this, you're going to survive the game because they just don't have enough attacks. Every point that your opponent has spent on a las cannon or on heavy dealing damage like Vindicators or anything like that, anything that's high strength, high damage, low number of attacks, is actually a detriment to them when they're versing this level of horde. So that's the idea there. And then in our other data sheets, we have 3 units of Accursed Cultists, all maxed out with 5 mutants, 6 torments, and they're where your Accursed Commune guys are going to go. And then we round it out with 3 units of Warp Talons. And the idea here is that the Warp Talons are going to be able to jump out, charge things that are in the midfield, kill them, disappear, presenting the only valid target as your Dark Commune bricks and your Cultist bricks. And then even if those Warp Talons do get caught out of position and are unable to do this, you're going to be able to use the stratagem to basically block any attacks that would have hit them. So you might drop a Warp Talon unit 9 inches away and go for a 9-inch charge, but position a Cultist unit nearby so that if you fail that charge, you're then able to protect the Warp Talons with those Cultists, and you have 120 Cultists. You don't care if one of them is just there to sacrifice itself to protect those Warp Talons. So you can do some really interesting stuff there. But that's pretty much the list. So there's nothing particularly finesse about this. It's pretty point and click and pretty straightforward. However, it can be absolutely oppressively overwhelming. Your Warp Talons are going in with reroll wounds, and you have the capacity to get reroll hits and wounds on your Dark Commune Cursed Cultist bricks. So you got a lot of rerolls, a lot of access to the damage through that. And then you also just have an absolute ton of objective control. You got all these 120 bodies of cultists that you can just throw out onto objectives, bog your opponent down, and any one of those cultist units, if you want to dial up its damage or its movement, you have the capacity to do that. I would advise against doing the Desperate Pacts unless you need the movement, so because it's going to result in you chewing down your own models. And the same goes for the lethal and sustains from your Dark Pacts. If you're charging 20 cultists into, say, let's say they've got a Rhino on an objective, like, you're not killing the Rhino. So there's no need to do sustained or lethals, right? You just want to go onto the Rhino with your 20 cultists. You might use the additional movement or the additional charge rolls to get on there, but basically your goal is to just sandbag that Rhino, make it so the opponent can't disembark, make it so that if they do disembark, they can't get onto the objective, you've got more objective control on there, those sorts of things, and you basically use your cultists to gum up the board, whilst your accursed cultist units go in and deal the damage. They go in and blow things up, they're the ones that are trying to deal with your opponent's threats, and their target priority is always going to be whatever it is in your opponent's army that is effective at killing your cultists. So let's say they got a Land Raider Redeemer with the big flamers, or they've got it might be a Thousand Suns unit with 10 warp flamers or something like that. They're the things that your accursed cultists want to go get. Meanwhile, your regular cultists are gumming up the board, dealing with their trading pieces and scoring you those victory points, whilst achieving your secondaries, and your Warp Talons are assisting the accursed cultist units in that dealing with the threats, dealing with the things that are going to threaten your horde. And that's the idea of this list. At this stage of the video, normally I would flip over to a deployment map, give you some points and tips on how to deploy it. However, for this, I think it's pretty straightforward, right? You just deploy all of it on the line, put all your Warp Talons, maybe one of them in Deep Strike, the other two of them out of line of sight, so that your opponent can't deal with them. If you can hide the accursed cultist units, you do, but you might not be able to, because this is going to have a huge footprint, this army, so you basically deploy as much as you can hidden, and then in your first turn, you just bum rush all the objectives. You just full send, you advance everything out. Your accursed cultist units, if there's something out there that they can target, then they go, cool, we're going to advance and charge, and we're going to charge that target and kill it. Same with your Warp Talons. If they want to, they can come out, try to kill things. However, your main priority is going to be keeping everything hidden if you can, and then bum rushing onto objectives, sandbagging them with cultists, and trying to score as many primary as you can, whilst making it as difficult as possible for your opponent to chew through your lines. There is one other thing that's worth noting, which I probably could pull up on the map, but I think this is pretty easy to explain, is that if you're versing another combat army, what you're going to want to do is take one of those units of 20 cultists and string it out along your deployment zone, and then have everything else deployed behind it, further than 4 inches behind. And that way, basically, your opponent's not going to be able to turn one charge you, because they can't. If they charge you, they can charge that cultist unit that you put out. They can't charge any of your meat, because they can't charge through enemy models. And that way you can protect all your meat from like World Eaters or CSM that have capacities to do those big explosive turn 1 charges with scout moves and all that sort of stuff. You just go, nope, I'm shutting that down by putting one line at the front. They're your bouncers, they're your security, they're going to prevent people from getting in. And then behind that you have your Warp Talons, your accursed cultist units ready to retaliate and hit back. So that's my overall summary of the Chaos Cult detachment. Let's have a look at where it fits on the leaderboard. Alright, here's our detachment leaderboard. As you can see, we've got the Veterans of the Long War currently sitting in that pole position up the top there. Deceptors, Packbound, Dread Talons, and the Fellhammer Siege Host. I'm going to put the Chaos Cults one in right here, just at the bottom. And not far below the Fellhammer Siege Host and the Dread Talons. I think all of them have an equal claim to being about as good as each other. And I'm putting them all as C tier. None of them are exclusively bad. They all work, and they will all win some games. But I think of the detachments we have available to us, these are among the worst. And as a result, I'm putting it down in that C tier. However, there has been some really interesting tournament data coming out with people that are running the Chaos Cults and are getting some interesting results. So if you disagree with anything that I've said here, or if you think that they are deserving of a B or even an A tier designation, let me know in the comments below and we'll get a conversation going, because I don't pretend to know everything. This is just sort of my opinions on that detachment, ways that I think it's best run, and some idea lists for where you can base yours if you're looking to start playing this detachment. So with that being said, we're going to end the video here. I hope you're enjoying this video series so far. If you are, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all of that good shit. Head over to blogforthebloodgod.com where you can pick up some merchandise like this shirt here. We've got neoprene gaming mats, objective markers, terrain, we've got dice, we've got all kinds of really cool stuff over on that website. So if you want to check any of that out, please do. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.
Look for the blood god.